we investigate mysteries of the unknown. This is Sigh Legends. Good evening. Welcome back to Sigh Legends. Today's topic, we're going to talk about some maritime nautical curses, and some of them you'll be familiar with, but some of them you may not be so familiar with, because one of them is a local legend here close to where I live. But let's start out our first nautical curse, and probably one of the most famous bad omens of the sea, and that is the story of course, the Flying Dutchman. This got its origins back in the 18th century and may have been based off of an actual warship that was lost at sea. Let's take a look. The Flying Dutchman is a legendary ghost ship which was said to never be able to make port, doomed to sail the oceans forever. The myth is likely to have originated from the 17th century golden age of the Dutch East India Company and Dutch maritime power. The oldest extant versions of the legend has been dated to the late 18th century. According to the legend, if hailed by another ship, the crew of the Flying Dutchman was said to send messages to land or to people long dead. Reporting sightings of the 19th and 20th centuries claim that the ship glowed with a ghostly light. In ocean lore, the sight of the phantom ship is an omen of doom. The first print reference to the ship appears in travels in various parts of Europe, Asia, and Africa during a series of 30 years and upward, 1790 by John MacDonald. The weather was so stormy that the sailors said they saw the Flying Dutchman. The common story is that this Dutchman came to the Cape in distress of weather and wanted to get into harbor, but could not get a pilot to conduct her, and was lost, and that ever since the very bad weather, her vision appears. The next literary reference appears in Chapter 6 of A Voyage to Botany Bay, also known as A Voyage to New South Wales, attributed to George Barrington. I had often heard of a superstition of sailors respecting apparitions and doom, but had never given much credit to the report. It seems that some years since a Dutch man-of-war was lost off the Cape of Good Hope, and every soul on board perished. Her consort weathered the gale and arrived soon after at a cape. Having refitted and returning to Europe, they were assailed by a violent tempest nearly in the same latitude in the night watch. Some of the people saw, or imagined that they saw, the vessel standing for them under a press of sail, as though she would run them down. One in particular affirmed it was the ship that had foundered in the former gale, and that it must certainly be her, or the apparition of her. But on its clearing up, the object, a dark, thick cloud, disappeared. Nothing could do away the idea of this phenomenon on the minds of all the sailors, and on the relating of the circumstances. When they arrived in port, the story spread like wildfire, and supposed phantom was called the Flying Dutchman. From the Dutch, the English seamen got the infatuation, and that there were very few Indian men, what was some one on board who pretends to have seen the apparition. The next literary reference introduces the motive of punishment for a crime and the scenes of infamy by John Leyden. It is a common superstition of mariners that in the high southern latitudes of the coast of Africa, hurricanes are frequently ushered in by the appearance of a specter ship, denominated the Flying Dutchman. The crew of the vessel are supposed to have been guilty of some dreadful crime in the infancy of navigation, and to have been stricken with pestilence, and are ordained to still the traverse the ocean on which they perish, till the period of their penance expire. Sir Walter Scott, a friend of John Leyden's, was the first to refer to the vessel as a pirate ship, writing in the notes to Rokeby that the ship was originally a vessel loaded with great wealth, on board of which some horrid act of murder and piracy had committed, and that the apparition of the ship is considered by mariners as the worst of all possible omens. According to some sources, 17th century Dutch captain Bernard Folk is the model for the captain of the ghost ship. Folk was renowned for his speed of his ships and his trips from the Netherlands to Java, and was suspected of being in league with the devil. The first versions of the legend as a story was printed in Blackwood's Edinburgh magazine for May 1821, which puts the scene of the Cape of Good Hope. This story introduces the name of Captain Hendrik van der Decken for the captain, and a modus of letters addressed to people long dead being offered to other ships for delivery, but if accepted will bring misfortune, and the captain having sworn to round the Cape of Good Hope, though it would take until the day of judgment. There have been many more sightings of the Dutchman and reports of doom that followed afterwards throughout history, but probably the most credible explanation is a superior mirage or Fata Morgana seen at sea. The news soon spread through the vessel that a phantom ship with a ghostly crew was sailing in the air over a phantom ocean, and that it was a bad omen and meant that not one of them should ever see land again. The captain was told the wonderful tale, and coming on the deck he explained to the sailors that this strange appearance was caused by the reflection of some ship that was sailing on the water below this image, but at such a distance that they could not see it. There were certain conditions of the atmosphere, he said, when the sun rays form a perfect picture in the air of objects on the earth, like the images one sees in a glass of water, but they were not generally upright, as in the case of this ship, but reversed, turned bottom upwards. This appearance in the air is called a mirage. He told the sailor to go up to the foretop and look beyond the phantom ship. The man obeyed and reported that he could see on the water below the ship in the air one precisely like it. Just then another ship was seen in the air, only this one was a steamship and was bottom upwards. As the captain had said, these mirages generally appeared. Soon after the steamship itself came in sight, the sailors were now convinced and never afterwards believed in phantom ships. Another optical effect known as looming occurs when rays of light are bent across different reflective indices. This could make a ship just off the horizon appear hoisted in the air. Well, that was pretty interesting. So what's your take on the Flying Dutchman? Can a crew be cursed to sail the sea for eternity or until the judgment day? Can man actually create a curse? Or can he create a curse by doing things against the Almighty, where the Almighty will enforce the curse? We just don't know. Do you believe that seeing the Flying Dutchman is a harbinger of death? Or do you believe it's just a mirage and a bunch of stories that came down through the ages by the maritime sailors? Now let's talk about Captain Francis McCary. a local legend here. He was a steamboat ferry captain that lived in New Albany, Indiana, and he put a curse upon the Ohio River. This was one of my favorite stories when I was a kid because it is local. It's only 6 miles away as the crow flies from me. So this story originally aired about a year ago as a Southern Indiana Ghost Hunters Chronicles short, but I think it's due to be revisited. So let's take a look at Captain McCary, please. Francis Frank McCary, born in 1805, was a wealthy and well-known steamboat captain who ran ferry boats from Portland to New Albany. Born to Andrew McCary, an Irish immigrant in the southern Indiana area, McCary's love of the river seemed only natural. The steamboat masters were not patsies by any means. Says historian Jack Custer, it was a dog-eat-dog business. Eccentric McCary was right in the middle of it, Custer said, describing him as a rather fiery-tempered Irishman. McCary had a volatile relationship with other steamboat captains, jealous of his success. In the 1820s, the future captain began working construction on various river sites. In the early 1840s, he worked as a tow operator. Later, he became a partner in J. Hume & Company, one of the area's leading producers of cement, flour, and lime. In the 1850s, McCary entered a new trade, the ferry business, by purchasing the Portland-New Albany ferry. Due to his company's dependence on the river, it was said that as the new burgeoning steamboat trade grew, so did McCary's anger and hostility. He felt that the wakes from the steamboats rocked his ferries and frightened the animals and people aboard. Before his death in 1857, the captain built a burial vault on the river. This is also when McCary's anger achieved legendary status. The tomb in which he was laid to rest was to be vertical. Some say it was so McCary could look out over his beloved Ohio River through the portal above the door of the entrance of the tomb. Others say it was done so the captain could curse the passing riverboats as well as the bridges crossing the river. His curse stated that anyone who sees my grave will not make it back to the shore, and the river would become their home. Although no documentation exists to support the captain's legendary anger, steamer cruise directors of the 1920s and 30s traveling to Ohio took pleasure in relating and often embellishing the tale of the Captain Francis McCary and his cursed tomb. Soon passing captains began blowing their whistle to ward off the Captain McCary's curse. In 1905, the captain's remains were removed from his tomb and reinterred in a family vault located in Cave Hill Cemetery in Louisville, Kentucky. The tomb, although empty today, still exists on a bluff about 400 feet above Highway 111 in Elizabeth, Indiana, and about 1 mile west of Caesars Casino. It is located on private property, so no visitors are allowed to visit. Even if you could get to the tomb, it's a rough and rocky climb in loose soil up about 400 feet. I've actually never been to the real captain's tomb in Elizabeth, Indiana. I always wanted to, but it is private property, and I've always been a stickler about you don't go on people's property that don't want you there. But it is an amazing story, whether it's real or whether it's not. I always heard this story from when I was a child. It was a big fascination of mine. So, neat little story to say the least. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed today's legends, and Let me know what you think in the comments down below. And tune in to us next time. From now, this is Mike Flickner saying, have a good day, and thank you for joining us with Sigh Legends.